Renata is a 41-year-old data analyst in Austin who has not bought a single thing without logging it in a spreadsheet since 2017. She pays an extra $600 a month toward her mortgage. She maxes out her 401k. She hasn't carried a credit card balance in 9 years. She drives a 2016 Honda Civic. She buys high-quality everything because she was taught to buy it once. On paper, Renata is doing everything right. Her net worth has grown by less than $38,000 in the last 4 years. Her coworker Keiko, 39, a restaurant manager in Sacramento who owns exactly 0 spreadsheets and cannot tell you her net worth without checking an app, gained $214,000 over the same period. Keiko carries a mortgage she has no intention of paying off early. She does not max out her 401k. She has never once tracked the price of a gallon of milk. What you think you know about good money habits is the most expensive thing you believe. 8 of the habits you've been taught to admire are quietly bleeding wealth from the people who practice them most faithfully. The 5th one on this list has been drilled into you by every financial expert you've ever trusted. And the 8th will feel personal, because it's the one you're probably doing right now, tonight, without realizing it's costing you. Habit 1. Rushing to pay off your mortgage early. There is a reason this one comes first. It is the habit most often performed with a feeling of righteousness, the extra payment, the bi-weekly schedule, the pride of watching the principal shrink. It feels like you are winning. Run the numbers and something ugly appears. The average 30-year fixed mortgage rate for borrowers who locked in between 2020 and 2021 was between 2.7% and 3.2%. The S&P 500, since its inception in 1957, has returned an average of roughly 10.3% annually, according to data compiled through 2025 by Fidelity Investments. After adjusting for inflation, that figure sits closer to 6.5%. A woman named Priya, 36, pharmacist, outside of Philadelphia, locked a 30-year fixed rate of 2.9% in early 2021 on a $320,000 mortgage. Her monthly principal and interest payment was $1,330. Starting in 2022, she began sending an extra $500 a month toward the mortgage. She felt disciplined. Her parents told her she was smart. Over 4 years, that $500 a month, $24,000 total, reduced her mortgage payoff timeline by roughly 5 years and saved her approximately $31,000 in interest over the life of the loan. Sounds good. If she had invested that same $500 per month into a low-cost S&P 500 index fund, averaging even a conservative 8% annual return, she would have accumulated approximately $28,500 in 4 years. And that money would still be compounding. Over the remaining 21 years of the original mortgage term, that same habit of investing instead of overpaying would produce roughly $400,000 in additional wealth, according to a Wharton School analysis of the opportunity cost of early mortgage repayment. Priya saved $31,000. She gave up over $400,000. The mortgage industry doesn't advertise this math. The Dave Ramsey School of Personal Finance doesn't either. Because the advice to pay off your house early makes people feel safe, and safety sells better than math. The cruelest part? The people who most aggressively pay off their mortgages are often the same people who then have no liquidity when an actual opportunity, a career transition, an investment, a move, shows up. They've locked their wealth inside walls they can't spend, and that leads directly into the second habit. Because the same instinct that overpays a mortgage is the instinct behind something even more quietly destructive. Habit 2, maxing out your 401k before everything else. This is the sacred cow, the untouchable advice. Every HR department orientation, every employer match pamphlet, every financial literacy article written since 1985 has told you the same thing. Max out your 401k first. It's free money. It's tax advantaged. It's the single smartest thing you can do. And for a very specific slice of people, that's true. For everyone else, it is a trap dressed as a benefit. In 2025, the 401k contribution limit was $23,500 for workers under 50. For a woman earning $72,000 a year, the approximate median income for full-time female workers according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. That means locking away nearly a third of her gross income into an account she cannot touch without penalty until she turns 59 and a half, a 10% early withdrawal penalty. Income taxes on top of that. restricted investment options chosen by her employer's plan administrator, higher expense ratios than she'd pay in a brokerage account. Here's what the pamphlet never mentions. Gabriella, a 33-year-old speech therapist in Denver, maxed her 401k for 5 consecutive years. During year 3, her car's transmission failed. The repair was $4,200. She didn't have it in cash because every spare dollar had gone into the retirement account. She put the repair on a credit card at 22.9% interest and took 4 months to pay it off, spending an extra $390 in interest alone. The system that told her to prioritize retirement savings above all else was the same system that punished her when life happened in the present. Match your employer's contribution? That is where the free money lives. Beyond that match, every additional dollar should be weighed against liquidity, against a Roth IRA's flexibility, against a taxable brokerage account you can actually access when you need it. The 401k maximum is not a target. It is a ceiling built for people whose present is already fully funded. Most people's present is not fully funded. Most people are being told to save for a future they can't afford to reach. Habit 3. Tracking every dollar you spend. This is where it gets personal. Budgeting apps have become a $1.5 billion industry. Mint had over 20 million users before it shut down. YNAB, Every Dollar Copilot. The market for financial tracking software has never been larger. The underlying message is consistent. Awareness creates control. If you know where every dollar goes, you'll spend less. The research says something different. A 2022 study published in the Journal of Marketing Research by professors Wendy De La Rosa at the Wharton School and Stephanie Tully at USC found that consumers who actively tracked their spending experienced heightened awareness, but not consistently reduced spending. In many cases, the act of monitoring created what the researchers described as a licensing effect. You track a week of disciplined behavior, and the tracking itself gives you psychological permission to reward yourself. The spreadsheet becomes the alibi. There's a darker mechanism underneath. Decision fatigue. Every purchase logged is a micro-decision. Every category sorted is cognitive labor. A 2019 paper by Kathleen Vose at the University of Minnesota demonstrated that decision fatigue degrades the quality of subsequent financial choices. The person who tracked 47 transactions this week is not sharper by Friday. She is depleted, and depleted people default to the easiest option, which is almost always the most expensive one. Renata, the spreadsheet woman from the opening, spends roughly 6 hours a month managing her tracking system. 6 hours of cognitive labor that produces a net savings rate barely above the national average. Keiko, her coworker, automated 3 transfers on the first of every month. $800 to a Roth IRA, $400 to a taxable brokerage account, $200 to a high-yield savings account. She never sees the money. She never tracks where the rest goes because the important money is already gone before she can touch it. The total time Keiko spends managing her finances each month is about 12 minutes. Automation beats surveillance. Every time. Habit 4. Always buying quality. The Buy It for Life philosophy has a seductive logic. Spend more upfront, replace less often, save money over time. A $300 pair of boots lasts 10 years. A $60 pair lasts 2. The math is obvious. Except when it isn't. Vime's boot theory, popularized by Terry Pratchett's fiction, has become personal finance gospel. The problem is that it was written as satire about poverty, not as investment advice. And the consumer market has exploited the philosophy ruthlessly. A 2023 Consumer Reports durability study found that in 6 of the 10 most common household product categories, mid-price items lasted within 15% as long as premium-priced alternatives. In some categories, kitchen appliances, luggage, winter coats, the correlation between price and durability was statistically negligible above the midpoint. What the buy quality habit actually produces is a permission structure for spending more. The $1,200 stand mixer, the $400 backpack, the $95 white t-shirt, each justified by the word investment, a word the financial industry defined precisely so that consumers would misapply it to consumption. A 29-year-old named Tomas, a high school teacher in Albuquerque, calculated his buy quality spending over 3 years. Premium coffee equipment, a high-end mattress, a flagship phone every cycle, investment cookware, Buy It for Life boots. Total premium over mid-range alternatives, $8,400. The durability difference over that period, functionally zero. Every premium item still worked. So did every mid-range equivalent his roommate owned. Tomas didn't buy quality. He bought a story about himself. The story cost $8,400. The buy quality habit is not about durability. It never was. It is about identity. It is about the person you become in your own mind when you say the words, "I invest in quality" at a dinner table. And identity is the most expensive product the consumer economy sells because it never goes on clearance and you never stop paying for it. So what does work? Buy mid-range. Replace when broken. Invest the difference. The boring answer. The one nobody films a YouTube video about. Habit 5. Hoarding cash in an emergency fund. Halfway through and the terrain has shifted beneath you. The habits that felt virtuous 10 minutes ago are starting to look different. This one might be the most protected belief in personal finance. Build an emergency fund of 3 to 6 months of expenses and keep it in a savings account. According to Bankrate's 2025 Emergency Savings Report, only 41% of Americans said they could cover a $1,000 emergency from savings. The standard advice, build that fund, exists because most people don't have one. But for the people who followed the advice, the ones who actually accumulated $15,000, $25,000, $40,000 in a savings account, they're being robbed in slow motion. Inflation in the United States averaged 4.1% annually between 2021 and 2024, according to Bureau of Labor Statistics CPI data. The average high-yield savings account during that same period paid between 0.5% and 5%, with the majority of savers, especially those at legacy banks like Chase or Bank of America, earning under 0.5% for most of that stretch. Clarissa, a 45-year-old IT project manager in Atlanta, held $42,000 in a Chase savings account for 3 years. She earned roughly $189 in interest over that period. Inflation eroded approximately $5,100 of that money's purchasing power. She didn't keep an emergency fund. She donated $5,000 to the bank. The fix isn't eliminating the emergency fund, it's restructuring it. 1 month of expenses in checking, 2 months in a high-yield savings account or money market fund. Anything beyond that in a conservative liquid investment. Short-term treasury bills, I-bonds, a conservative bond ETF. Accessible within days, still protected, but no longer melting. The financial industry loves the phrase emergency fund because it implies a single pool of idle money. Idle money is profitable. For the bank holding it. Habit 6, treating all debt as the enemy. You were taught that debt is dangerous. You were taught to avoid it, minimize it, destroy it. That message came from a specific place, the consumer debt crisis of the late 1990s and early 2000s, when credit card interest rates were predatory and bankruptcy filings were climbing. That message was right for that kind of debt. It was catastrophically wrong for every other kind. The wealthiest 1% of Americans hold more debt than the bottom 50% combined, according to the Federal Reserve's 2022 survey of consumer finances. Not because they are careless, because they understand that debt at 3% used to acquire an asset returning 8% is not a liability. It is a machine. Wealthy borrowers use low-interest debt to buy assets, real estate, index funds inside margin accounts, business inventory, while keeping their own capital invested and compounding. The rest of the population has been conditioned to pay off everything, own everything outright, and feel morally superior about it. Moral superiority does not compound. A woman named Opal, 48, operations director in Richmond, inherited $120,000 in 2019. Her first instinct was to pay off her remaining $94,000 mortgage at 3.1% interest. She did. The relief was immediate. The house was hers. If she had instead invested that $94,000 in a diversified index portfolio, returning even 8% annually, by 2025, she would have accumulated approximately $149,000, while continuing to make her $1,100 monthly mortgage payment from her salary. She would have owned the same house, plus an additional $55,000 in liquid wealth. Opal felt free. She was $55,000 poorer for it. Debt is a tool. Like any tool, it injures when mishandled. But refusing to pick it up at all is not discipline. It is superstition. And superstition, in a financial system built on leverage, is the most expensive religion you can practice. Which brings us to the habit that costs the most per minute of time spent doing it. Habit 7. Checking your investments constantly. You downloaded the app. You set up the alerts. You check your portfolio at lunch, on the train, before bed. You feel informed. You feel in control. You are performing the most expensive ritual in retail investing. Morningstar's 2024 Mind the Gap report found that over the 10-year period ending December 2023, the average fund investor earned 6.3% per year, while the funds themselves returned 7.3%. That 1% annual gap, compounded over a decade, cost investors roughly 15% of total potential returns. Dalbar's 2025 Quantitative Analysis of Investor Behavior report was worse. In 2024, the average equity fund investor underperformed the S&P 500 by 8.48 percentage points. The S&P returned 25%. The average investor captured 16.5%. It was the fourth largest behavioral underperformance gap since Dalbar began tracking in 1985. The average equity investor has underperformed the S&P 500 for 15 consecutive years. Not because they chose bad funds, because they couldn't stop watching. The legendary Fidelity Magellan Fund, managed by Peter Lynch, returned 29% annually during the decade he ran it, one of the greatest track records in the history of asset management. By Lynch's own calculations, the average investor in his fund earned roughly 7%. They bought high when the returns looked spectacular. They sold low when the headlines turned dark. The fund performed. The humans destroyed the performance. Noor, a 37-year-old UX designer in Chicago, checked her investment portfolio an average of 11 times per week in 2023. She made 14 trades that year. Each one a reaction to a headline, a dip, a surge, a podcast guest who sounded confident. Her portfolio returned 9.2% in a year. The S&P returned 26.3%. If she had deleted the app and done nothing, literally nothing, she would have earned an additional $11,400. $11,400. Lost to attention. Lost to the illusion of control, lost to the financial equivalent of opening the oven every 5 minutes and wondering why the cake won't rise. The best performing accounts at most brokerages belong to people who forgot they had them. This is not a joke. It is a documented pattern. Fidelity reportedly conducted an internal review of its highest performing retail accounts and found that the owners were either deceased or had forgotten the accounts existed. Inaction in investing is the most profitable skill you can develop, and it is the one skill that every app, every alert, every push notification is specifically engineered to prevent you from practicing. And it collides with the last habit on this list, the one that ties every other habit together into something you might recognize from your own week. Habit 8, punishing yourself into wealth. This is the quiet one, the habit nobody names because it doesn't look like a habit. It looks like discipline. You say no to the dinner. You skip the vacation your friends are taking. You wear the shoes past their expiration because replacing them feels like failure. You eat the cheaper version. You cancel the subscription you actually enjoy. Every small act of deprivation registers as progress, as if suffering and wealth are the same axis, and the more you deny yourself, the closer you get. Behavioral economists call this deprivation spending. The pattern was identified in a 2018 study by Claudia Townsend at the University of Miami and Wendy Liu at UC San Diego. Consumers who engage in prolonged voluntary restriction do not maintain lower spending over time. They cycle. Restriction phases are followed by compensatory spending spikes, purchases that are larger, less rational, and more emotionally driven than what the restriction was designed to prevent. The person who eats rice and beans for 3 months and then spends $2,300 on a weekend trip, she didn't plan. The person who cancels every streaming service and then impulse buys a $900 coat because she deserved it. The restriction doesn't build discipline. It builds pressure, and pressure finds a release. Think about Renata again, the woman from the opening. 7 years of obsessive financial control. Spreadsheets, overpayments, premium products she justified as frugal, and a net worth that barely moved. Now think about Keiko. Automated savings, no tracking, moderate enjoyment of her income, no guilt cycles, no compensatory binges. Keiko didn't outperform Renata because she was smarter. She outperformed because she was not at war with her own spending. Her system removed the battlefield entirely. The most destructive money habit isn't overspending. It isn't ignorance. It isn't even laziness. It's weaponizing discipline against yourself until the weapon breaks. 20 minutes ago, you believed that tracking every dollar made you responsible, that paying off your mortgage early was always wise, that your emergency fund was safe, that avoiding all debt was moral, that checking your portfolio made you informed, that denying yourself was the price of wealth. None of that was stupid. All of it was taught to you by an industry, a culture, a generation of advice that profits when you confuse activity with progress, restriction with strategy, and suffering with financial growth. The next obstacle is this. Now that you can see these habits for what they are, you'll need to dismantle them. And dismantling a habit that feels virtuous is harder than breaking one that feels indulgent. Your brain will fight you. It will tell you that easing up on the mortgage is reckless, that not tracking every dollar is lazy, that enjoying your money is irresponsible. That voice isn't wisdom. It's the residue of a system that needed you anxious to keep you profitable. You clicked expecting a list of bad habits that belong to other people. What you got was a mirror held up to the habits you've been proudest of, and a set of numbers that don't lie. Carry this with you. The most expensive financial habit is the one that feels like sacrifice but produces no return. The one you keep doing because it hurts. And you were taught that hurting means it's working. It doesn't. If the voice inside that sentence sounded like yours, this channel was built for you. Subscribe to Aria Invests, because the most dangerous financial advice isn't the kind that sounds wrong. It's the kind that sounds exactly right.